This morning's Dharma talk is titled, I believe, Without Elaboration. Is that what I titled it? So the idea there is something we're doing all the time. We're elaborating on everything. You come in the door, you go out the door, you get in your car, you stop at Walgreens, you get ready to go to bed, you get ready to get up. Constant elaboration. Anything that occurs, we elaborate, we explain, we interpret, we redefine. We use our thought process to actually back away from that which is frightening to us or scary or disturbing or painful, you name it, or I'll name it. You ever notice how many times people say, you name it? Another phrase filler. So without elaboration, it's not so much about stopping the commentary, the running flow of information that's constantly coming into your mind stream. It's about seeing that it's happening. See that it's happening. Just witness it. Just see it. Just see it rather than see what you think about it. This is the actual, say if this is the actual thing that's happening in your mind, and then this is the elaboration. You've totally blocked off what's happening because you don't want to look at it. And why don't you want to look at it? Because it challenges your identity, your feeling about yourself, who you are, what you've been taught, your preconceptions, your presumptions, your conditioning. I'll say it again. Your conditioning, like an air conditioner. You turn on the air conditioner, it reconditions the room. Society, your mom, your dad, your brothers, your sisters, your whole environment, and not to mention, although I am going to mention it, the karma that brought you into this lifetime. The very getting together of your mom and dad, or before you were here, they got together and say, let's have Junior. No, I want a daughter. That wasn't meant to be funny, so no smiling. Some people are pretty good at not smiling when I say that. You'd be amazed how if you're not thinking, and I'm not talking about stopping thinking, because you really can't do that, have you noticed? Like when we're driving in this morning, what did you say about worrying? Worrying? How do you not worry? How do you stop worrying is basically what you were saying. And what do? You look at the worrying. Because to worry and try to get away from the worrying, or to go into the worrying and re-worry, I just made that up, re-worry, that's worrying and worrying. The first worry is okay because that's just arising, you're just worried. But the second, third, and fourth worry is, I would call it, if we want to give it a name, let's call it insanity. How's that? Because it probably is. Because you're doing something over and over and over that is not helping at all. It's just tightening the noose around your neck, tighter and tighter. So without elaboration, what is being recommended is that you see through the sitting practice of meditation. I'm not saying you couldn't do this without meditating, but it might be pretty difficult because the whole world is clamoring at you for your attention, for your time, for your money, for your input, for your help, with all kinds of propaganda, with all kinds of ideas about what you should be doing for them to help their cause, because their cause, keep oil out of the Great Lakes, is more important than you sitting down and facing a wall, training your mind. But then you could go there, you could elaborate on that, you could say, yes, but if I don't go stop them from putting oil in the Great Lakes, eventually we won't have any drinking water, and I won't be able to face the wall. Okay, I give up then. I give up easy. On some things, and other things I never give up on. Without elaboration. So it's not so much the idea of having some kind of formula that, okay, no, I don't have to look at that anymore. Now I can just do this way through some kind of a formula. It seems necessary to revisit, relook at that over and over again. What is this? What is this? It has been said, and I'm saying, and will probably continue to say, you may need a teacher, or you may not. That would be up to you. I'm not here to sell you anything. You come in the room, you get, as I've said hundreds of times, you give me permission, I'm going to say stuff. And I also say on top of that, don't believe a thing I say. Also, don't disbelieve it. Don't do anything with it. Listen to what I'm saying. Since you're here, you might as well. And then when you leave, watch what tags along with you. Watch what you might remember. Or watch what you can't quite remember, but wish you could remember. When I say don't believe or don't disbelieve, what am I fundamentally doing there? I'm saying, I really trust your intelligence. You have to, I can't awaken you. I can sit up here through my 45 plus years of training my own mind, of practicing and practicing and practicing, insofar as I have been able to in this society, which doesn't really support a spiritual practice. I had to work in a factory so that I could practice. What I'm saying is, I want you to trust yourself. I want you to trust your own mind, not your thought patterns. Don't believe your thought patterns. Don't disbelieve your thought patterns. Here we are in that same thing again. Don't believe it, don't disbelieve it. If you don't believe it and you don't disbelieve it, you have no particular position on it, which is not particularly, there's that four-syllable word again, that a lot of people just use 3 syllables. Particular, it's 5 syllables, isn't it? God, I screwed up. So don't add, don't do the math. Don't do any math at all unless you really need the math, unless you really need to measure something or determine something. Wait till the need for that arises rather than immediately start to measure, judge, evaluate, condemn, accept anything that's happening in front of you or around you or in your life. So when I say don't believe it, don't disbelieve it, I'm encouraging you to have an open mind, I guess would be the conventional way of saying it, about anything that's happening, even things that are obviously wrong or obviously right. Give it the benefit of the doubt. Use your own intelligence rather than just believe CNN or just believe your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister. Even me, don't believe me either. How many people will tell you that? Probably not very many. Will talk to you and say, don't believe anything I say. Don't just disbelieve anything. Don't do anything with it. So I'm saying, in a roundabout sort of way, I'm saying you're going to have to do this if you want to awaken to who you are before this lifetime ends. And it may end tomorrow. You may look at me and say, well, he's going before I am. Perhaps not. I could be around for 6 more months, and you could die in 3 months. Ha ha. What cartoon character is it that says,
Nelson.
ha ha? Which one?
Nelson from The Simpsons.
Oh, from The Simpsons, that's right. Yeah, it makes a big impression on me. I watch him a lot. So there are all kinds of, speaking of without elaborations, there are all kinds of teachings, teachers, traditions going back, this lineage goes back 2,500 years, long time. And there are all kinds of different ways of practicing. There's the 4 foundation practices, the 4 ordinary foundations of the 4 reminders on precious human birth, impermanence, karma, and suffering. Those 3 are very, very definite practices that you can look at, that you can spend a lot of time contemplating. The first one being a very important one. First, contemplate the preciousness of being free and well-favored. Difficult to gain, easy to lose. Now we must do something meaningful. What do we do that's meaningful? Find out who you are. Find out what this life is. Instead of just put all kinds of fillers in it as far as what you're going to do next and what your friends think and what you think about what your friends are thinking, and then what your friends think about what you're thinking about what they're thinking. Let's all go to Starbucks and chat about who's right, who's wrong. Have a conversation based on swapping opinions, ideas. Well, what do you think? I don't know. What do you think? I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying it's very, very circular, and it's called elaborating. But without elaborations, you just have justice. And quite often, when we're approaching it with that kind of a concept, the thus just this is filled with all kinds of contamination. But you can actually see, because you're not adding, you're not subtracting, you're not dividing, you can actually see as you sit, especially if you're sitting in front of a wall, holding still and observing what moves, you can actually see the contamination. Now the ego, or the self-centeredness, or the seventh consciousness, as it is referred to in the Yogacara tradition, of the 8 consciousnesses dynamic, that part of the consciousness that thinks there's somebody that needs promoting or defending or elaborating on or wanting to be included and so on. It seems to be necessary to see that what is behind that wanting this and wanting that, or not wanting this, or wanting more of this or less of that, quite often isn't just hunger, which is a natural thing for a human being to feel, or the desire for warmth when it's cold, or the desire for something cooler when it's hot. Something very simple that's very straightforward that has to do with the nerve endings in all the 6 sense fields. Something very simple, but something further about our identity. We want to be somebody. We want to be important. We want to be successful. We want to not fail, and so on. Quite often, the negativity that comes up in that area, we want to tamp it down. We want to get away from it, and we will use various means, from chemicals to activities. Someone might be really depressed, have difficulty with their emotions, and might decide to just start jogging every day. Not incorrect, not wrong with that. But I'm only saying may, because I don't know, only that person's really going to know. You might have 5 people that are all having depression, and everyone goes out jogging, and they don't even know each other, but they just happen to come up with that idea about a way of working with their negative feelings in the morning. And one person, it might be the very thing, because of dependent origination, because of the causes and conditions that conspire, just say it that way, to make things difficult. It's an incredibly difficult matrix. Has anybody seen the Matrix? Sure they have seen the Matrix. Look at what is being ignored by the little cocoon form when you look down and see the panorama of all the beings that are all in that situation. Have no idea of their actual situation. So most people are just about this body, mind, and they believe it. They think this is who they are. And they think their thoughts are real, and they believe their thoughts. This is the fundamental nature of most human beings. This is what literally billions of people are doing. There's only a few people that are, what could you say, questioning that? Is this real? Are my thoughts real? What are thoughts? I was raised by people that not to say anything negative about them because they took care of me, but I doubt that it ever entered their mind to even question what a thought was. And we all know people, some people we love and we're very close to, have no interest at all in questioning any damn thing. They just want to live out of their what? Preconceptions, opinions, ideas about everything. They believe their thoughts. They're locked into their thought patterns. You are doing it now on some level. If you weren't doing it, you wouldn't be here. And if I didn't know about it, I wouldn't be here. What am I telling you? I'll tell you what I'm telling you. I've said many times, I'll say it again. Train your mind. Don't take anything for granted. Don't believe me. Don't disbelieve me. There's only one teacher. I mean, sure, I'm sitting up here on a ton, and we have all the sutras and everything, and it looks like everybody's obeying me. You should talk to the people who live here. There isn't anybody obeying me at all. There's no guru worship going on here at all, that I can see anyway. If it starts to happen, I'll kick you hard. But what is being said is train yourself. You may have to come in here and sit and face a wall for 20 years. I don't know. If you do, and I live long enough, I'll be here and help you. If I'm dead, then somebody else who has been my student will probably be here and help you. It probably is going to keep going. I have a feeling that there is that kind of momentum has been started. But you personally have to see this yourself. You have to see it. It's lonely. It begins by being lonely, but it ends up by being what? Alone. I have no friends. Basically, I have no enemies. There are people who think they're my friends. And there are people who think they're my enemies also. But the fundamental situation is, as far as no elaboration or without elaboration, is to see that yourself. So when that completely is seen, the elaboration just kind of flakes off. It just stops occurring. You don't have to stop it. That's why I'm not saying don't elaborate. I'm saying without elaboration. So it'll bring your mind to the concept of, what the hell does he mean by that? Elaboration? Now, elaborate on what? That's exactly it. Elaborate on what? What are you elaborating on? Elaboration is like, here's what happens, and instead of the awareness practice is saying, just look at that. The direct perception of whatever is happening. But the elaboration is something you lay on top of it because it's easier to work with the explanation, the ideas, the interpretation of that. And it's not incorrect. Quite often, the interpretation is very accurate, especially if you talk with somebody who is highly intelligent and is able to handle concepts with great fluidity. This person can actually talk you out of whatever it is that you're trying to directly perceive because they're so bright. Go on the internet, you see it everywhere. People going back and forth, and sometimes if you read some of those, you think, phew, I wouldn't want to talk to that person. That person would have me tied up in knots because they're so smart. Relatively speaking, they're very, very good at handling concepts. It's all over the place. And quite often they're using it to establish their position and be against some other position. Anytime there's for and against, you've got problems. And when I say you have problems, I don't mean you have any problems. Well, you have problems. You don't really have any problems, except the problems you have. So, what am I saying? Basically, I'm saying without elaboration, this means that if that begins to arise as your dynamic, without elaboration, the ego mind will freak out because you won't know what to do next. You're so used to living your life out of hope and fear. Hope for this and fear of that. Hope, gimme. Fear, go away. Shut down the fear, open up. Maybe this will happen, maybe that'll happen. I'm not saying hope and fear is wrong, it's just a dynamic that the ego or the self-centeredness uses to promote itself as an identity that needs to be promoted or respected or admired, or at least not abused, and fear of actually fear of death is probably the fundamental problem, if you want to call it that. Of course, what dies? The body dies, we know that. But who you are, does that die? Who you actually are, does that die? Does the consciousness die because there's no body? Find out. Don't take my word for anything. I'm not even promoting that. I'm just saying, check it out. Look at it. Find out. What you're being introduced to, if I have any say-so about it, and I might have a little bit occasionally, is your mind. You need to look at your mind and see that your mind is what you're looking. You're never looking anywhere. Everywhere you look, you see your mind. If you think you see something else, this is called delusion. And this is what this representation of someone who lived 2,500 years ago called Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, was discovered himself and began to teach other kids, 17, 18-year-old kids, one at a time until there became thousands of them. And then we don't know what happened back there, but then it slowly developed. But back in those days, there was no guru worshiping going on. And there was no 100,000 prostrations, 100,000 repetitions of the Vajrasattva mantra, 100,000 offerings to the mandala. There's no fancy or special preliminaries, as it would be said in the tantric tradition. And we're not taking those away. There probably wasn't anybody sitting down facing a wall either. Did they have walls 2,500 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So there was probably something they could look at. But I think he probably had them had their eyes closed more or maybe one eye was closed, one eye was open, non-duality and stuff like that. I don't mock the Buddha. No. So the encouragement is to get you, each one of you. I know a few of you really well, and others I don't know at all. But I'm encouraging you, whatever you do with your life, whatever you do with the rest of your life, whatever you do in the next 3 hours, 3 days, 3 years, try to put some awareness practice in there. There's nothing to believe here, nothing to disbelieve. Buddhism basically, there's some people that treat it otherwise, is not a belief system. There's nothing to believe in. Even though great teachers use the word belief all the time. I don't use it other than to say, what do I say? Baloney. Another B word. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to, because all evidence about anything is partial. You can't get total evidence about anything that's going on, because if you have evidence that this person killed this person, still you have no idea what the background of those and how all the causes and conditions got together to put this person there as a victim, this person as a murderer, perpetrator, whatever. You have no idea. There's no way to see all the roots that go back in time. Not only in this lifetime, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. If you want to call them lifetimes. They look separate. Maybe not. Maybe the only thing that's separate is the biological situation. Consciousness doesn't have any walls, except those created by hope and fear. There's no walls. You can see through walls. Nobody's saying, no, you can't. Yeah, you can. Look right through that wall right there. It's a window. It's called a window. So we could have some questions before we have a few more minutes. Yes, sir.
Earlier you said that there are some things that you never give up on.
Yes.
What are those things?
Save all beings. Vows that I've received well, I've received them first early on, 30 years ago, 35 years ago. The vow to be with all things. That won't be given up on. More?
How do you do
Don't turn away from anything. Don't grasp anything. Don't reject anything. Don't pull on anything. Don't push on anything. And don't shut down. Just observe. Just be here. Just be present. Just your presence. And if you're just present, then you may find yourself speaking like I'm doing. You may find yourself out planting flowers along the side of the monastery. You might find yourself moving to Oregon. You notice I didn't say Oregon because it's not gone yet. Speak.
A question from Shane out in California.
Oh, that's Shane.
Two
He's
questions.
all that way.
Actually. His first one, what are some of the most common ways that we are conditioned that we aren't aware of? And secondly, is it helpful for the teacher to tell you how you're conditioned?
No. That's the second question, not particularly helpful. Maybe, but probably not. I've done that a few times, and I just get, the person shuts down even more. Because it's something you have to see your conditioning. Now, your conditioning is probably going to be more apparent if you sit in front of me. But that doesn't mean it's more apparent because I'm telling you that. It's because you're once you become a student, you don't need me anymore. I'm here to help you see what it's like to be a student. If you really become a student, then, as it has been said, as I'm saying, everything is your teacher. But you have to really do that. You can't be your ego saying, well, I'll be my own teacher. I don't need any other. That's bullshit. Pardon my Sanskrit.
And his first question, what are some of the most common ways that we are conditioned that we aren't aware of?
Cultural conditioning is a lot of pressure. It looks like it's like the whole thing with the oil in the Great Lakes. We're not saying that something shouldn't be done about that, but the causes and conditions that led us up to that time have been ignored for decades, if not to say even longer. Just like all of the corporations before my birth and your birth that were getting rid of trains. There used to be trains all over Michigan. You could ride anywhere in a train. Now you can't go anywhere in a train because they want you to drive a car and buy gas. So that whole thing, that's all ignored. So what we're doing is we're trying to snip off the nose of the dragon. So you're way out here working on this. We got to stop this. I would say go back there and find out where that dragon's sleeping at. You want to do something? Or find an organization possibly that is working at a really, really deep level. There's several organizations that have been around for a long time that are working on that. Support those, help those. Very difficult to go and try to stop what's happening, even though it's heartbreaking to see. More?
From Sandru in New York.
Sandru, yes.
He asks, is sewing a Roxu, oh, he just sent another one. Is sewing a Roxu or Okesa similar to a Nundro practice? And then secondly, can we find where the dragon is sleeping, and should we even try?
Well, to do it as the dragon situation with the whole world might be. I mean, I'm not even suggesting you do anything. And particularly, I'm saying if you feel motivated in that area, then I mean, there's so many organizations that have been around a long time that are underfunded. Civil Liberties Union. I mean, all kinds of other organizations. So it might be better to find an organization rather than start a new organization. Find one that's already working in that area and go in there and work with that in some way. I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't say something on the surface of it also. What's the other, the Nundro?
Well, actually, he's got two other questions.
Well, how about the Nundro?
Yeah, he asks if sewing a Roxu or Okesa is similar to Nundro practice.
Well, it takes a lot less time than Nundro. Nundro is 100,000 prostrations, 100,000 repetitions of the Vajrasattva mantra, 100,000 offerings to the mandala. And if you're in the Kagyu lineage, which are different ones, it's 1,000,000 recitations of Guru Yoga mantra. So it's time consuming. whereas you can sew a Raksu. Well, not if you're their teacher, because you're slow. You know, in a few months, you can. I mean, some people have done it in a matter of a month or so. So you can sew that. So that being so, also that what sewing the Raksu and is a way of dedicating yourself to the practice. I call it glue. Nundro practice is quite is. It's been said you can attain enlightenment by just practicing Nundro practice. But I think it's possible to attain realization or awakening by looking at the wall. It's also possible to attain realization just by seeing clearly. But it's difficult because our conditioning is so circular. About the time we eventually start to see that we're in circles, we're 80 years old. So this is why I say sit down and watch the circularity of the mind. Don't interrupt it, more circularity. Don't look away from it, more circularity. Do nothing with it but observe it. So sewing a Raksu, sewing a robe is just a way of it's very similar in the Tibetan tradition to, not the same, just similar to Damshig or the Samaya vow, binding yourself to the Guru and to the Yidam or the meditation deity. So that's a very powerful way of practicing. And receiving precepts is another way. So as far as I think they're just different as far as the weight, the weight of what's gonna. I think it's so tied up in your own karma and everything. All the causes and conditions that come together to even bring us to face with a meditation master or a Zen teacher are so varied. Yes.
Sorry, this is a very simple question. If we're at the beginning of this journey and we're actually starting to practice awareness and really start to think about our thought processes and our preconceptions, what kind of reading material or practices would you recommend?
Well, I'm very biased there, and I can give you. We study about 8 or 9 different texts here and alternate. And I think those are very powerful. Probably the most important text for you to read would be "Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism" by Chogyam Trungpa, who is my teacher, who has a lot of bad. Don't look at the. You can read it if you want to, but don't particularly look at the bad press. He's gotten some terrible press from people that have no idea. I knew him. Much different than reading something about him in Harper's and then having opinions on it. So I'm not saying he wasn't a bad guy. Of course he was. He's bad. And then the other one would be read my book. It's on Kindle.
A question from James York in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yes, James.
He says, Sensei, how do we stop our perception of what Buddhism is?
Don't try to stop or start anything. Just you're asking the question says that you have a little bit of an idea of something going on there. There's a preconception about it. So just look at the preconception. Don't label it intensely with the idea of trying to eliminate it. Don't do anything with it. Just look at it. And nothing lasts. So anything you look at without adding, anything you look at without subtracting, anything you look at without dividing or separating yourself from will change. I don't care what it is. Other than that one thing, that doesn't change. And that's for you to find out what that is. Yes.
Question from Sandru.
Sandru.
Is it delusion to think that this world centers on my brain, the glob of matter inside my skull? Is mind much larger?
Yeah, the brain, I don't have, I'm not a psychiatrist as you are, so I don't have the background in that particular area. On the other hand, my activity over the last several decades has been about looking at what appears as the mind and the consciousness. And what is arising here relative to the question that you're asking is find out. Because anything I tell you it will just cause your thinking process, and I'm not condemning you to anything, but to go in circles. And so I would say, come here and go in circles. sit in front of the wall, and about every 15 or 20 circles, we'll talk. That's a joke, of course. Meant to be a joke. Time to go another direction now. Okay, so, yes. Okay, it's time for daily Dharma gathering.
We'll
Okay,
dedicate the merit.
very good. We'll dedicate the merit. Thank you so much for listening.
So if you'll stand and dedicate the merit in the back of your chant books. And again, want to remind everybody about Saturday is the all day at the end of the month. And we also have donation boxes in the hallway, as well as the ability to donate online and also purchase your copy of a meditation primer in an ebook.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jio-san Shi-Ji-U, Shi-San-Bu-Sa, Moko-San, Moko-Ja, Horo-Mi, the 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who's unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.